None bigger, though, in terms of big breakthroughs and takeaways than Belal Muhammad. Remember the name. Muhammad made sure that name would be remembered in history by upsetting Leon Edwards via unanimous decision to take their welterweight title. And by the way, break Luke Thomas's 35 and over welterweight or below curse on the men's side. Tyron Woodley, formerly the only person to do it, but Luke, he won the title before he was 35. So at 36, Belal Muhammad smashed a lot of things. Speaking of that, Luke, alongside with an apology that he has coming from me, what specifically did we all miss when we handicapped this fight? Some more aggressively than others. What did we miss in what Belal was able to ultimately do to Leon?
We have to have a conversation in a moment about what time this event took place.
Yes.
And then to what extent we think that matters. Maybe you think it matters a lot. Maybe you think it matters very little. That is a portion of the conversation. But for the interest of just understanding what happened in the fight, let's put that to the side for just a moment and talk about what we saw in the fight itself. Okay, so on Friday's MK, we had discussed this, and I can speak for myself. I had argued I didn't see an obvious path for him. Those are the language that I used. And
you didn't say, you're going to get tuned up like a guitar. You didn't do anything like that.
I didn't do that. And again, I was always of the belief that, the odds were pretty close. Belal's been on a great win streak.
Yeah.
There's some questions about how good some of the wins were, but in general, he's been active. He's been winning. MMA's crazy. Things you don't expect to happen. Sure enough, here we are. But that's not really an explanation. I think there's a couple of things that I go to in this one. First of all, Belal Muhammad and the wrestling and then the sort of offensive cycle he was able to get going was much better than I anticipated. I knew he could wrestle. I knew he had some of that in him, but it really all came together. He had a very clear sense of what he wanted to do, what positions he was trying to achieve, and that made a big difference. Secondly, his striking, it's not Canelo.
It's not Canelo or Marquez, but I take back anything in terms of where my expectations were on how quickly he could evolve that dude.
But at a bare minimum, BC, and surely you would agree with this, it was very useful.
Very useful.
Very
Great
useful.
jab.
Very useful. The jab landed. It was good at backing Leon up. It was good about setting up all the different strikes that he wanted to get going. That was very, very impressive as well. Also, BC, you go back to even the press conference when Leon made him, when he flinched at him and Belal just no-sold it completely.
That's what I should have saw.
And
That's what I should have read.
Right,
Yep.
you had asked me on Friday about, he's making this all a grudge match. And I was saying to you, sometimes it can be a distraction, sometimes it can be fuel. Clearly. Dude, he acted with purpose from the word go. You saw the result. He was a man possessed, on fire.
Yes.
He knew he was going to win. And also, he was kind of overcome with emotion a little bit when he won, but not really. It wasn't go back and look at Holly Holm when she knocked out Ronda Rousey. She was covering her face oh my God, I cannot believe where I am. Belal was, I think, elated, but then you see him afterwards. This was exactly what he expected to happen. I think it's a competitive mindset. I think they ironed out a great game plan, which he executed very, very well. I do want to say, I'm not making this argument that, is that the best Leon or did he have an off night? But he did make partly because Belal put him in that position, but he made a series of very, very weird decisions.
Did you hear him say afterwards, not using it as an excuse, but when they said, what went wrong after the fight, he basically said, the time change, I felt exhausted all week. He wasn't saying that as this is the reason why UFC screwed me. He took the loss, gave Belal the respect, but he did say, I felt weak all week because of that time adjustment. I know you want to talk about that.
I do want to talk about that in a minute, but let me tell you one reason why that falls a little flat for me.
Sure.
Not all of it falls flat, but one reason why it falls flat is I went back and I was and I've got a video coming out about this on my YouTube channel, which is I went back and I watched and I was okay, wait a second, time out here. Why wasn't Kamaru Usman able to do this?
Yeah.
What happened there? So I went back and I watched the Usman fight and I watched how we set it up. I'm going to tell you that the striking of, and just by the way, the offensive urgency and the how constantly Belal was on him, Kamaru wasn't doing that, number one. Number two, the functional value of it, getting him to back up was a lot better. But the other part is, if you go back and you look at some of the ways in which he was able to set up the takedowns, and there was a difference in the takedowns he was executing versus Kamaru. But one of the big things that I noticed was if you go back and look at Leon's standing southpaw, right? So he's standing just like this I am in front of you. Go back and watch. He had this weird high elbow block, which you sometimes see. I have bad shoulder rotation, so I can't really do it. But sometimes you'll see Dustin Poirier do it, but usually more in open space. Leon's up against the fence, nearly square, somewhat in a southpaw stance, and then he's elbow blocking. Dude, Belal shot right underneath this yawning gap of space that he gave him. I can buy, BC, I honestly can buy that fighting at 6 a.m. is probably not optimal for anybody. I can believe that.
But they signed the contract first and foremost.
I understand, but I'm saying, if you are thinking of a time, if you wanted to get the very best out of all your athletes, would you pick 6 a.m.? Probably not. On the other hand, this tactical decision to block strikes that way, you opened the door for Belal, and he just walked right on in. That is on Leon and nobody else. BC, I pitch it back to you.
Sure.
Tell me what you saw out of all of this.
No, I mean, I think you nailed it. I said coming in that I loved the intangibles about Belal. So, you know, the motor, what I saw was great poise and mental toughness to get him this far. But obviously, Luke, I gotta take the big L. I mean, you're gonna come out. If I'm gonna come out and aggressively say, look, I'm sorry, I don't trust Blades' chin. I like Aspinall by early knockout. Nailed it. I'm sorry, Patty is going to make a statement here and get a finish. I didn't call the right finish. Nailed it. Yeah, Luke, I felt the same vibes and feels of where Belal's status was. And I felt it was different from when I underrated Leon on the rise up, and Leon surprised me in ways that I didn't think he would. I wonder if that led to us overrating Leon. We can get to that in a second. But yeah, I'm sitting here humbly apologizing and happy that Belal was able to break through so far above what my expectations were. Luke, I knew he brought that stuff to the table. Did he put the threat of the takedown and the striking together in a more seamless fashion than I thought he was going to be able to? Yes, and that's a credit to him at 36 for improving so much in the 3 years since their first fight. But Luke, ultimately, what I missed the most, you know, a lot of people are comparing lightly his style and what he did to Khabib because Khabib had been in his corner in the past and had helped him during training camp. They have the same manager. I want to make a Khabib comparison here, but it actually isn't the wrestling. What impressed me and shocked me the most was he had Khabib-like mental focus. And it wasn't just focused through all the critics, the loudmouths like me being like, I just don't see it. I don't see him at this level. I was wrong. Did I go too far, Luke? And was I disrespectful? I could have been towing the line for the purposes of entertainment, so I humbly take that.
I would say this, if I may say it fairly. I don't think you were trying to be mean. I don't believe that. But you've done it, what I've done before, because I've absolutely done this. I've made this mistake before. Indignant at the idea that the guy you thought couldn't win, like you were, like, there's just no way, and then very dismissive of it. I've made the exact same mistake.
But I was ultimately wrong at where I thought his ceiling was, and that's why I make the Khabib comparison. Habib. It was Habib-like mental focus and toughness, not just for the critics that saying he had no chance, not just for how long he had to wait, never the promotion's darling. He's 36 by the time he gets the title shot. But everything across the board was so damn poised and focused. Luke, his confidence was through the roof, and it was so firm that what did I miss? What was my biggest takeaway I'm missing? I misread the entire fight week and sort of where he was and whether the stage was going to be too bright for him. Luke, I want to throw to his post-fight comments because I was so impressed, because this could have been his opportunity to dunk on everybody, all the critics and everything. But instead, what he delivered is ultimately who he is and maybe a lot of the reason why he's here. He's humble, hardworking, he's a warrior, and he never stopped believing in himself.
It sounds like all those people booing right now got a lot of tears coming down their eyes. I see you guys with watery eyes right now. I got my family in here. I got all my family at home. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, God first always. Secondly, this fight is nothing. This is for my family, my people in Palestine. They're fighting the real fight. And Charlotte puts a smile on their face. One of them guys over there. I'm just trying to do my part. Alhamdulillah always.
I've had people say, Luke, doesn't he actually embody what your BS Factory Town MMA idea would be? Yeah, he kind of does. I missed completely what this guy was all about. I thought he was acting out of character. Turns out he was just sharpening his focus. I give him credit. He was fighting for more. We're going to praise, Usyk and those guys who kind of came off the front lines when their nation was at war and put that focus together and fought for their people. As you could hear from him, he just did that right there. He was exactly who he needed to be when the moment demanded the most out of him. And like you said afterwards, that cool, calm celebration showed you that this is a big thing in his life, but there's much bigger, and this is just part of it. I was very impressed with the character that he ultimately showed. And I don't care that Dana didn't love it and it wasn't exciting. I'm not here to disparage or take anything away from this win. Leon ultimately surprised me by not being as thorough as I thought he would. I thought he would handle what Belal brought in, but the reason why he didn't, I'm going to say, is more Belal than anything else. He stepped up his game when it mattered most.
It wasn't that there wasn't any case for some skepticism, some rational skepticism. Belal was 36. We talk about the 35. It's not a curse. It's just a statistic. But we talk about it. The way he had broke it, I misunderstood it a little bit. The way he had broke it is Tyron won the title at 34, and his defenses came after. Belal is the first guy to win it at 170 and below at above 35 years of age, 36. But I'll say a couple of things. One, he was 36, and we're like, well, that doesn't bode well, statistically speaking. And then two, we had said, remember, he had come off the two, I mean, he had 3 Usman fights, but he'd come off the 2 back-to-back Usman fights. And then the Colby fight sucked, but, getting ready for Colby, you have to know wrestling is going to be a chief concern that you have to be prepared for. And we thought, wow, man, Belal is 36. He's getting a guy coming off the Colby and Usman wars, or battles anyway. This is just a bad time. And then in retrospect, what you realize is the long path that Belal had to take to get here actually slowly but very effectively fine-tuned him.
It did.
Just for this moment. And I'm going to say this too. The Colby fight, not so much. But certainly in the 2 back-to-back Usman fights, I watched those in real time, and we did breakdowns on them, and I thought, wow, man, like, I don't know how you can improve upon this. I don't know if it was Belal himself. I don't know if it was Belal and his coaches. I don't know if it was Habib. But they took the good parts of what Belal has done and built, and they kind of refined the universe of what he should try to do and made him stick to that. Wow, that worked.
Yes.
That worked really, really well. And I did not know, and I went back and I watched, like I said, I went back and I watched the Usman fight, the 3rd Usman fight. Like, how the hell was Usman not able to do that? And again, I'm going to break some of this down a little bit later. They took some of the stuff that worked that Usman did well in the 3rd fight, but they picked up on a couple of tendencies that I haven't seen anybody else talk about yet that went wrong for Usman, that they corrected, that allowed Belal to find the takedown more successfully and then manage to hold position once he got it. Man, I got to tell you, Leon Edwards, you saw it. There was one takedown in open space. Or takedown attempt, I should say. And Leon stuffed it beautifully. And up against the fence, people are like, oh, his takedown defense is really good. And it is.
Sure.
And it is. But Belal and his team, or if Belal Muhammad is watching, I don't know. Belal, buddy, whoever came up with the game plan that they had for the specific kinds of takedowns and the nature in which they were shot, and then the offensive sequence that went with it, boy, they did their homework. Such a sharp eye. I was blown away. I was like, I could not figure it out.
That's the thing. He didn't just out gas tank him. It was out thought him, out game planned him, out adapted.
Yes.
And that's where it's like, I don't want to take anything away. So I don't want to do the revisionist history of, do we go back and did we overrate Leon's rise?
No, it was pretty great.
I mean, no, I want to say no, because he had to go through Usman twice. He had to go through a Colby who's still difficult if you're not strong in that one area. But you did see the revisionist history right away. People going, see, I told you Leon was overrated. Either way, Belal gets that credit. But man, he did it in every category to get it done. That's why I don't take anything away because it wasn't exciting. He shut down everything Leon does.
He did shut down everything Leon does. And again, he had picked up, I don't want to spoil it, but there are a couple of defensive tendencies in takedowns along the fence that Leon makes that, again, was it Habib? Was it Belal? Was it his coaches? Was it a combination of all three? I don't know. But they read it. And I went back and I looked at the Luque fight and I looked at the Thompson fight. 5 takedowns in the Luque fight, 7 takedowns in the Thompson fight. And you don't see these tendencies in those fights. You see some of it, but not really. In this one, you see a clear, distinct way in which he tries to position himself around Leon to set up the offensive sequences that come after it. And they did such a good job. I didn't think he could do it. I wasn't like completely blown away that he did it, but I was skeptical. Man, that long road to the title, that long road, he really, really earned that opportunity. And I mean, you want to talk about making the most of it by picking up where Usman and Colby could not do it and then improving upon that.
And his fans reminded me that if we're going to discount the quality of the win over Gilbert Burns to get here because of how Gilbert was
injured.
A short camp. Let's not forget that Belal was coming through Ramadan for that training camp and really had to. I mean, look, he's had to jump over hurdles and push himself and be as mentally tough as possible. I want to make sure at least post I don't miss that.
Yes, and I also want to say this too. Like one thing we had said was, there was questions about some of those wins, like the Luque win. Who was Luque at the time, and who was Thompson? I tell you what, someone brought this up to me. I forget who it was on Twitter. They're like, shouldn't you go back and reevaluate that Sean Brady win? Well, I got to tell you, that Sean Brady win is aging nicely.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe Brady got rattled, but like, look at the pressure that Belal puts on people. I'm going to point this out. The level of activity. How much rest does Belal give you? Not much. He constantly forces you to play a game where you can't think through decisions. And so you make suboptimal ones. You'll make defensive lapses. You'll make wrong offensive reads, or at least not the right ones, suboptimally. And then he's just all over you because he's built in this reaction machine that he's got. And I want to point this out. Like, people don't talk about this enough. Once he shoots, he knows exactly where he's going. And if you defend this way, he knows exactly what the response will be. And if you defend that way, he knows exactly what the third option should be. There's a route tree that he knows offensively and goes to it. And it's very, very difficult to deal with.
But he needs the 5-round championship cardio, despite this was only his second fight that went to the 5th round in his career. So it's like he had that when he needed it at 36. So Luke, not Woodley, Edwards ends up losing 3-2, 3-2, and 4-1. He rallies back in the 5th round to cut Belal, and Belal has to show the toughness and keep that gas tank together to survive that. Most people across the board, I believe, are giving Leon round 3, as you should, because he did rebound down 0-2, seemingly to kind of dominate that round, start to finish on the ground, getting a takedown of his own and threatening subs throughout. But Luke, I want to run what happened in round 2 and ask you, look, this was Muhammad causing this to him, so it's no excuse. But how much did this pile driver here, Luke, in which Leon did not protect his head, in your opinion, affect him? It had to be some. You can't say it. You can't put all your eggs in that basket because he came out a round after this and completely dominated Belal. What do you think, though? This had to rattle the cobwebs in the head and really put you in a tough spot.
I don't think it was great. He did post on the hand there to mitigate that somewhat.
That was bad, though.
Couldn't have helped. Probably rattled him. But, like, remember, dude, Belal got a takedown 20 seconds into the first round. And you didn't hear Leon complain about it afterwards. I'm not saying that it shouldn't have been complained about or that there aren't issues about spiking him on his head that particular way. But that just doesn't explain why.
Should we outlaw that in MMA, or is it outlawed?
So it is. So one outlaws it completely.
Okay, one has it. In the UFC, you can still technically spike on the top of the head?
I think there are certain ways about how you can and can't do it. You can do it, I think, as part of an arc. I have to go back and look at some of the rules. There are ways in which you can do it.
That would
it's
seem like
strictly forbidden in one.
I would think that you can outlaw that and it's not going to hurt the game, because how many people try to weaponize that? Obviously, when you pick somebody up, your goal is to slam them and try to add injury to that and jump on top of them. But if it's something that can lead somebody paralyzed, we probably should get ahead of that, right?
Again, I don't think it's a very essential technique. Also, I don't think he meant to do it. I think he meant to just turn him over. I don't think he meant to drive, which doesn't necessarily,
Do you think Leon gassed himself out at all by using so much energy in round 3 to take the back? I'm trying to figure out what happened in 4 or 5, where, yes, he did rally in the 5th.
He rallied
His coach
big time
gave
in the
another
5th. I mean, that was a great
speech,
rally in the 5th.
But he was unable to keep Belal off of him. Was Leon in rounds 4 or 5 for the most part?
Belal was just better.
That's what I'm saying.
Belal was just better overall. I mean, again, in open space, if there was no wall and they could just fight forever, takedowns are going to be hard to come by for Belal. Some of them he would still get, but they'd be hard to come by. If they were striking in open space, and he wasn't really so much worried about having to be taken down against the wall, maybe Leon's better. I just lost my hearing in this thing. Can you still hear me talk?
I can hear you.
There we go.
We're back.
But that's not the game they're playing. Like, for example, was it round 2, I believe? Edwards has an underhook, and he's blocking the far side hip like this, and he's turning him off the fence. Belal just took that and then switched to a knee tap and then ran him right over back to the back there. Like, he was on top of it. On top of it. They knew, he
was preparing for the rematch for 3 years while Edwards was the one who was actually maybe overlooking.
I hate that the Niños say this these days, but he knew the assignment. He knew the assignment. He prepared for that test much better then Leon
So
Edwards
to the
did.
victor goes the spoils, and it might be Shavkat Rakhmonov next. At 36 here, Belal raised his stock. He's probably going to get some pound-for-pound votes rightfully after what he just did to a guy that I believe was in the top 3 or 4 on most people's list. Luke, how do you like Belal's chances leaning into his strengths like he did against Edwards, even against somebody like Shavkat?
So I think, listen, Belal is obviously not a champion by accident. Got here the hard way, beat people that no one wanted. No one wanted to fight Sean Brady. He did it, and he fucking stopped him, right? And obviously everyone wants to fight Leon, but not very easy to do, and you saw what Belal did. So it would be very, very foolish to just dismiss the idea that Belal can't retain, right away. I don't want to be that guy. But I do think it's fair to say, if you want to be fair to both guys, Shavkat is a tough fucking customer, man.
Yeah.
And he's got all kinds of tricks and throws up against the fence. That's the interesting part, because if he stops the takedown up against the fence, or at least holds it off for just a moment, dude, he's got all kinds of tricks, trips, throws, you name it, from that position to get on top. 17 fights, 17 wins, 17 finishes. And that's the other part. Look at Leon, who was able to reverse position in the 5th, and it was enough to win the 5th, at least on a couple of the judges' scorecards. And certainly, it was a gruesome scene there for a moment. If you let Shavkat hang around for 25 minutes,
True.
I'm not sure there's a person in MMA in the welterweight division he can't beat
I'm
under
intrigued
that
by that
condition.
fight, though. I'm intrigued.
Oh, it's very.
It's gonna
like
I'd
dude,
love to see it in Chicago.
Belal is going to win rounds against that guy. Make no
Sure.
mistake.
We
Make
don't
no
see
mistake.
big fights in either sport. Big fights in Chicago. I'd like to see that be an excuse. Let's
When they were with Fox, when UFC had the Fox deal, remember Shevchenko did the armbar on Holly Holm.
Yes.
Over in Chicago. They used to go to Chicago quite frequently. Bellator made it a
I think
big
it was
deal
a
there.
decision against Holm. You're saying she submitted Holm?
Or was it Pena that she hit the
Pena,
armbar
yes.
on? Either way, one of those fights took place in Chicago.
Yep.
There was a
It was a
Shevchenko
big Fox one, yeah.
Fox card in Chicago. But also, Bellator used to go there quite frequently. Now, by the way, I don't know if folks picked up on this news. They had an event Bellator did scheduled for September. That event is canceled, or it's going to be rescheduled. You can no longer get tickets for it. They took it off the list. So just pointing out there's something else, that there's a market there that I think could be really great for everybody.
Even for Bellator.
Well, Bellator is just a name at this point.
Luke, we mentioned the whole bonus thing. We have sound of Dana White being... So this is not his specific sound where he reacted to this fight, where he did sound a little bit disappointed, didn't think it was a barn burner, didn't think it was exciting enough. But overall, Luke, he seemed upset about getting tricked into once again raising the bonuses during the press conference. Here's his words in general about 304.
Every time you get on a press conference, the fighters manage to get you to up the bonuses. Do you think there's an argument that maybe you should just up them to...
I think tonight showed that we should not, no. Upping them doesn't change anything. It doesn't make anybody fight any harder. It doesn't change anything. I'm not doing this again. Ever. Today was the last day that I'm doing that, yeah. Not saying that in the future the bonuses couldn't get up, but I'm not going to be at a press conference and say 200, 300, fucking never again. Never again. So you can thank everybody on this card for that.
Damn, dude.
Yeah. Nobody fought any harder. There was no sense of urgency. Holy shit, I want the 100,000.
3 a.m.
7 straight. Who gives a fuck? It's fucking 7 o'clock in Vegas. So whatever. Yeah. Never again.
Okay. And
7 straight fucking decisions. Yeah. The 100,000 was a real big fucking woohoo. Let's get it, boys. Fuck that shit. Never again.
Okay.
Luke, I do think Patty and Tom Aspinall kind of saved this card in a way, because it was all those decisions in a row that weren't peaking for full excitement. Is this the boss just being angry that they didn't bring it to his level, or what do you make of
Who
this?
else in this room has argued that upping the bonuses did nothing to actually incentivize
You were
a change
wrong
in
about
behavior?
UFC 300.
I definitely don't
You
think
were
I
wrong
was.
on that.
I definitely don't think
I
I
think
was.
if you did a poll of the audience,
That has nothing to do with the truth value of anything. Polling the audience, what does that mean?
are you trying to insult the intelligence level of my audience?
You could poll anybody. Polling them is not evidence of anything. The reality is what you can reasonably demonstrate as an incentivizing factor by a noticeable and clear change in behavior, of which there is not enough evidence to conclude that. And now we have another one.
Conversation have to be a scientific study.
It's not, but like if you're going to make a claim, hey, doing this changes behavior, you have to have evidence for your claim.
Is this the like I said, it hit a ditch, this card, but they pulled it out. I don't know if this was the card to be like, this sucks. I'm the hater lately, and I'm telling you I enjoyed this
agree
card.
with Dana that upping the bonuses doesn't do anything, but of course, like that's not a reason to not pay the guys more, because
Yes.
Like they deserve more. That's a different conversation. But I would say this: it is very, very hilarious to me that they booked a card at 6 a.m. with a main event that anybody with half a brain knew did not necessarily have the highest potential for a finish, or even great action necessarily, and then blaming the fighters for not like rescuing it from that reality. That's a choice. That's a choice you can make. If you want to.
I agree with you. I don't like it. Dana had one other choice to make. I do want to get your take on this when the whole flag gate was brought up again. Let's listen to this reporter's question.
Belal Muhammad's corner put the Palestine flag behind him on the fence, and what it looked like from press row was they were told to put it down. So I was just wondering, because there were other flags shown throughout the night, if that was kind of random, or if that's a policy thing because of the war.
Hey, what?
Belal Muhammad's corner had the Palestine flag behind him, and
Dana doing a bit here when he can never hear the question.
So was that random, or is it like a policy thing because of?
He put a what?
Palestine flag.
Oh, Palestine flag, and somebody said take it down? Who said take it down?
I don't know who it was, but it looked like it was someone from the UFC. There was like two people just like telling them to don't put it don't put it on the fence.
Looked like there were people from UFC? Were they wearing fucking UFC hats or
no, I mean
name tags?
Otherwise, I wouldn't have been right at the octagon.
I have no idea.
But there's no like new flag policy thing because of anything.
I have no idea. I get what you're trying to do, but I have no idea.
I was just wondering because.
Yeah. I know what you're trying to do. I know what you're trying to do. Good try. I have no idea, but good try. You guys love to do that shit.
Well, he's in a mood.
This is not a gotcha
Have a good
setup.
night.
This is, and he walked off.
Yeah,
like,
he was in a bad mood.
But like, to be fair, this is not a gotcha thing. This is has your policy
if he
changed,
didn't
right?
know that I mean, he's the CEO, so I don't know why he wouldn't know. But assuming he didn't know what happened, I understand being like, I'd have to look into it. I genuinely do not know.
But what's this disdain for the fucking media? But this is not the media trying to spin something. This is literally a guy doing his job, trying to get an answer about a topic that connects far beyond fight sports.
The media doing its job is what disturbs him. That's the point I'm trying to like. That's what people don't seem to understand. Like, and also like getting clarification. Is there a change in flag policy? But I will say this in defense of UFC, I think he did walk out with the flag. Did he not? He walked out with the flag, and then his walkout song is a song by a Palestinian artist, and the name of the song is "My Blood Is Palestinian."
Yeah.
So like, his overtures to his culture seem to be accepted on the broadcast, but I don't know what the flag policy is at this point either. I don't know.
Well, Luke, let me tell you, in a world of slot reels and blackjack deals, if you can let me transition out of this topic,
I do want to talk one more thing. What about the time zone? What about the timing of the event?
So you heard Dana quickly say no to it. My belief here is it affects everybody, but if everybody signs up for it and has the same thing to overcome, it's like if you and I signed for a number one contender fight on 2 weeks' notice, but we're both dealing with that same 2 weeks' notice, then it's equal. You either take it or you don't, ultimately. Same thing with fighting in another country in a different time zone. Same thing, unfortunately, with fighting at 5 a.m. Do I want title fights locally at 5 and 6 a.m.? No. But again, there is some leverage, there is some negotiation, some level for stars, and you ultimately can walk out and say, I don't want this fight in this situation. If everybody has to do it, Luke, then to me it's even keel. Same thing with the Sphere. Who knows what the Sphere's unique atmosphere will do to a fighter's focus, to everything? Like, it could be, this could be, C-level Kane levels of just like shock and sort of shaking you up. But everybody's going to agree to do it. They agree to do it, so I'm okay with it.
I'm with that argument. I think that's fair. I think if you agree to do it and you have time to prepare for it and it goes poorly for you, you just kind of have to live with the consequences a little bit. I would say a couple of things, though. One, people are like, oh, well, Belal had the jet lag. Right, but Belal is still fighting on East Coast time. He's still fighting on the timing of the UFC pay-per-view did not change for East Coast American fans. His clock is still attuned to that. So while there may be jet lag in the sense of normalizing on a Manchester calendar, it's still the clock he's keeping largely in the U.S. That's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I'd say is Leon has to just recognize that some of his tactical decisions were really poor. I mentioned the high elbow blocking. That was just a really, really bad decision. So he has to live with that. The thing I will say, though, is, and I had a back and forth with a positive one, but with Jake Donovan, Jake Donovan, a well-known and very respected boxing reporter. Shouts to Jake Donovan. He's great.
Long-time boxing scene guy.
Right. So we were trying to go back and forth about you know, I was like, I could not imagine an A-side in boxing agreeing to, on the promoter's behalf, a 5 or 6 a.m. show. And his point was, well, some of these Saudi cards are 2 and 3 a.m. Okay, right. Fair. That's a fair point. That's a fair point. Because if you're getting Saudi Arabian money to put on a fight at 2 or 3 in the morning, they have properly incentivized you to eat shit on that time so you can do it. But like, none of those dynamics are in play for this one. Would Bud Crawford, for a European card, fight at 6 in the morning?
It depends where a fighter is in their arc. For example, Ricky Hatton, his big breakthrough title win was over Kostiazou. He did it at home in the UK.
That was in Manchester, right?
Yeah, they did it on Showtime, but they did it live on East Coast time, so it was the same exact thing. And everybody there had to stay up until the middle of the night to do that. But again, at that point, that was what was demanded in the TV landscape. You could easily make the argument now that, especially with UFC's distribution deal and that, you know, how expected was this card to do big pay-per-view numbers anyway? Does it even matter to their bottom line? Would I, on the East Coast, who this is supposed to be aiming for, would I rather have it regular time at 1:30 a.m. or would I rather have it, you know, dinner time at 5 p.m. Eastern? I'd rather have that. So it really comes down to me, like, who has the leverage to push against that? If you don't, and that's your fight and you have to sign up for it, well, then everybody's dealing with it. But I think the only argument here is, why does it have to be that way? This isn't a card that they needed on, in my opinion, on regular East Coast time to like bring the justified traffic.
Again, the UFC in 2023 made more than all other MMA and boxing promoters combined. They're spending what, 25, 30 million on this Sphere card, which, by the way, could be a gigantic hit. It could be a bust. We don't even know. It probably won't be a bust, but who's to say like exactly what it will be? We don't know. You mean to tell me they can't forego a little bit to give the Manchester fans something that's more appropriate? Even like delaying it a little bit, changing the time a little bit. I just find it, if you're Ricky Hatton and Showtime is trying to incentivize you, or you're taking money from Saudi Arabia that's life-changing and you want to fight at those times, that's fine. Here's my thought. In a world where they're making them fight at 6 a.m. and they're like, bonuses are still going to be $50K, it's like, maybe give them $100K if you're asking them to fight at 6 in the morning. That's kind of my only thought. Even if you don't change the behavior.
You have the potential to get diminishing results. And
just as a goodwill gesture, thank you for doing this kind of thing. That's my thought. All right.